ever seen a building that was so huge, so imposing, that it felt like it was designed just to intimidate you? Well, that was the whole idea behind Assyrian architecture. See, in a world of constant warfare, their buildings weren't just for shelter. No, they were these massive statements of power, engineered to amaze their friends and absolutely terrify their enemies. All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll get the big picture of what these citadels were all about. Then, we're going to zoom in on one spectacular fortress, take a walk inside its palace, and finally, we'll meet the brilliant five-legged guardians standing watch at the gate. So, first things first, let's get a handle on the grand philosophy here. What was it about an Assyrian city that made it the blueprint for an entire empire's ambition? We're really zeroing in on a specific slice of time here, the peak of the Neo-Assyrian Empire, roughly between 900 and 700 BC. You could say this was their golden age of building, a time when kings were literally constructing their legacies out of mud, brick, and stone. What's so interesting here is how all these characteristics worked together to send one very clear message. First off, the focus. Unlike a lot of ancient cultures who put temples first, for the Assyrians, the king's palace was the center of the universe. It makes sense. In a state built on warfare, the king was the ultimate protector. This focus on royalty was then cranked up to 11 by the sheer scale of their cities, these massive fortified citadels. And then you have the artistry. All these incredible carvings celebrating the king's personal victories. Everything, and I mean everything, pointed back to him. So, to really see these ideas, the royal focus, the massive scale, the celebratory art, all in action, let's turn to a perfect example, the incredible fortress city built by King Sargon II. He named it Dur-Sharu-Kin. That literally translates from Akkadian to Fortress of Sargon. I mean, you can't get much more direct than that, right? He was not being subtle. The city was his. And you can just see the ambition laid out in a basic facts. Sargon II didn't just move into an old city and fix it up. Nope. He built this place, Dur-Sharu-Kin, from scratch in what is now modern-day Khorsabad. It gives you such a clear picture of his ego, a massive, heavily fortified city, a perfectly planned symbol of his absolute authority. And inside those massive walls, you had a whole world. Of course, there was the royal palace, but you also had temples, a towering 7-story ziggurat, government buildings, and all the services needed to keep the royal court humming. Stables, kitchens, bakeries, the works. It was a totally self-sufficient city, built just for the king. Okay, so now let's imagine we're stepping through the gates of the palace itself. This wasn't just one giant, confusing building. It was meticulously organized into 3 separate zones, and each one had a very specific job. It's actually a really logical system when you think about it. First, you have the seraglio. That was the public official space, the front office, if you will, for holding court and dealing with state business. Then there was the harem, which was the private residential area for the king and his family. And finally, you had the khan, the service hub that was basically the engine room, with all the kitchens and storage that kept the whole massive operation running smoothly. And this brings us to the guardians of these incredible spaces. Positioned at all the main gateways were some of the most iconic and, frankly, most artistically clever sculptures in all of ancient history. They were called the lamassu, and these were not just statues for decoration, oh no. They were seen as powerful protective deities, divine spirits whose very presence was meant to ward off evil and protect everyone inside the king's household. And their form was this incredible hybrid. They had the head of a human, to symbolize intelligence, the muscular body of a bull or a lion for pure strength, and the wings of a huge bird, symbolizing a connection to the gods. Every single part was symbolic. But if you look really closely at a lamassu, you'll probably notice something a little strange. They have 5 legs. And this isn't some ancient mistake. This is a mark of pure artistic genius. So here's the brilliant part. The statue actually changes depending on your point of view. When you approach a gate from the front, you see 2 legs. The lamassu looks completely stationary, solid, and immovable, an imposing guardian. But as you walk through the gate and see it from the side, you now see 4 legs, which creates this amazing illusion that the creature is in motion, striding right alongside you. It's an incredible optical illusion, carved in stone. And that, right there, is what Assyrian architecture was all about. It was a masterclass in psychology, using unbelievable scale, powerful symbols, and these clever perspective tricks to communicate one single,
undeniable message: absolute power and divine protection.
Which kind of leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? We might not be carving five-legged guardians anymore, but think about it. What architectural symbols of power and protection, things like skyscrapers, stadiums, or government buildings, do we build into our own cities today?